Water wars at 14,000 feet. From their perspective, water isn't a resource. It's a clock. Every liter pumped resets pressure in a system nobody fully maps, and the lag between cause and effect can be months. Salar hydrology looks simple from a drone: white crust, blue ponds, but underground it's braided. Brine aquifers sit heavy and salty. Freshwater aquifers ride lighter above and along the fringes. They're connected through fractures and old lake beds you can't see, and they talk to each other in slow whispers, not shouts. Here's the thing: when you pull brine fast, you don't just lower the brine, you change how freshwater moves at the edge. That's why locals track springs and lagoons like accountants. A flamingo lagoon a few kilometers off doesn't dry in a day. It thins. In 6 months, algae shifts. In a year, nesting changes. That's the signal. You can argue models in Santiago. You can't argue a dry trough next to a corral. Indigenous communities around Atacama, Uyuni, and Hombre Muerto keep their own ledgers. Not spreadsheets, notebooks with dates, wind, cloud cover, a well's taste, micro-stories stack. A herder in Toconao marks 3 centimeters lost in a season. A farmer in Antofalla tastes metal edge in a well after a storm. A school in Sussex switches to tracked water 2 weeks earlier than last year. Small moments, right? But they add up to politics sharper than any contract clause. Cost curves pretend water is cheap until it is. Every cubic meter carries a shadow price: what it costs you in permits, in truck deliveries, in community goodwill, in the risk of a blockade if a spring runs low. You won't see that number on a balance sheet, but it's real. And because altitude and aridity amplify everything, mistakes don't forgive quickly. If you overdraw, recovery isn't measured in days, it's seasons. Chile's Atacama tells the story in paperwork. Quotas cap brine and freshwater extraction, with metering that makes operators sweat. Albemarle and SQM log flows like pilots' checklists, because exceeding a monthly cap isn't just a fine, it's a reputation hit that invites tighter rules. Regulators now look at brine cones of depression right alongside species counts. If a lagoon dips out of range, extraction slows until it stabilizes. You can hear the CFO's teeth grind when a hydrologist says, "We need to wait." Unknown to them, across the border in Argentina, the same debate plays out with a different accent. Provinces call the shots. Catamarca might greenlight a pump test, while Jujuy demands a full basin model. Some weeks feel like water futures in disguise, timelines stretched, permits conditional, informal signals sent through community assemblies. A governor announces jobs. A village asks for meters on every well and 24/7 data feeds. If those feeds show trouble, roadblocks rise in hours, trucks stop. A port slot in Antofagasta goes to waste, and an offtake customer, watching delays stack, calls to renegotiate. Bolivia adds pride to physics. The state leads, guarding sovereignty over Uyuni and smaller salars with a firm hand. Technicians know the salt crust problem: thick, capricious, hard on roads, harder on ponds. The brine's magnesium penalty means more reagents, more rinse water, more patience. Communities expect a say, not a briefing. The memory of outside firms overpromising runs deep. So when a model claims no freshwater impact, the first response isn't applause. It's "show us where the water comes from" when the wind stalls for a week. Here's where it gets interesting. Companies pitch direct lithium extraction as the water fix. Adsorb it, swap it, strip it, return the brine, keep the lithium, skip the ponds. On paper, that cuts evaporation loss and shrinks surface area. On the salar, altitude and chemistry push back. Fouling hits faster in dusty air. Reagents ship late on mountain roads. And when you re-inject, the brine isn't the same. It's colder, cleaner of lithium, but still salt-heavy. It flows differently. That can nudge pressure gradients in ways models don't predict. Net, you might use less fresh water, but you still face the same fight: who trusts your meters? Meanwhile, community leaders have learned the language of flow rates and isotopes. In Paine, a council member points to a chart. "This spring lags your pumps by 2 months." In Pasto's Grands, a woman pulls out photos of a stream thinning episode by episode. She's not anti-mining. She wants a throttle tied to hydrology, not quarterly targets. A company offers school funding and a clinic. Useful, sure, but the vote swings on water monitors with public dashboards and a shutdown trigger everyone signs. Stakes rise when seasons stack weird. El Niño flips to La Niña, storms hit the wrong side of a ridge, and the recharge you counted on slides past the basin. A single bad wet season can push a salar into a defensive crouch, Operators cut runs, protect grades, and pray a rival stumbles first. Automakers downstream don't see the raindrops, they see force majeure. And get this, they thought their 3 offtakes insulated risk. But if all 3 draw on the same basin family, the correlation is 1 when it matters. Action on the ground looks mundane and tense. A water truck idles at dawn outside a clinic while a line of pickups waits at a checkpoint. A hydrologist kneels by a piezometer, the gauge a few notches lower than last month. A plant manager stares at a dashboard, debating whether to slow a train of ponds to stay within quota. Across the ridge, a protest leader checks WhatsApp. More buses are coming, kids will miss class, the mayor wants to talk. Choices that feel small move millions. Impact is simple and hard. Water scarcity reprices every contract. Royalties that once leaned on output shift to floors tied to basin health. Offtakes bake in hydrology clauses and dynamic volumes. Insurance riders exclude community blockades linked to water disputes. Lenders ask for dual-source water plans, desal lines, recycled process loops, even distant aquifer swaps. Each layer adds cost and time, but running slower to run longer keeps the desert from saying no. This was the moment everything changed for investors who only saw brine as feedstock. In the Andes, water is the boss. Pumps don't set the pace, springs do. DLE, the promised shortcut with hidden knives. Meanwhile, the boardroom fix had a 3-letter name. DLE, direct lithium extraction, sounded like a cheat code. Skip the ponds, pull lithium ions straight from brine, put the water back, and run faster with a smaller footprint. Get ready for this, the lab rigs worked. Beakers, columns, clean feed, neat curves. Adsorbents grabbed lithium. Ion exchange beds swapped it. Solvent systems stripped and regenerated like clockwork. On slides, recovery ticked up, cycle time fell, and water use looked gentle. Investors loved it. Communities wanted it to be true. But here's the thing, the Sala isn't a lab. Brine isn't uniform. It comes loaded with magnesium, calcium, boron, sulfate, silica, each one a hitchhiker that gums up gear. At altitude, dust finds every seal. Temperature swings morning to night change viscosity. The first month, a DLE skid hums. By month 3, fouling starts. Beds need wash cycles. Wash cycles need reagents. Reagents need trucks. Trucks need open roads. And the clock that DLE was supposed to beat starts ticking again, just with different steps. Action on the pad looks like this. A containerized unit lands at 4,000 meters. Tex bolt lines, prime pumps, and the first brine runs clear. Lithium loading curves match the pilot. Everyone exhales. Then the upstream well-pulled slightly warmer mix, the magnesium to lithium ratio drifts, and the adsorbent selectivity slides. The plant compensates by tightening residence time. That trims throughput. A week later, a dust storm hits. Filters cake. Pressure differentials spike. A bypass opens to protect membranes. When they cycle back, one bed hasn't fully regenerated. Breakthrough happens. Lithium slips past into the reject stream. Impact feels small in the control room. Just a percentage point here, an hour there, but it adds up. Net recovery drops toward the same 30 to 50% band operators already live with. The promise of 80% on spec, on time, starts to look like the old beaker dream. And when you re-inject the stripped brine, you face a new puzzle. It's colder, lower in lithium, and a touch different in chemistry. It sinks or spreads in ways the model didn't quite predict. Local monitors see a lag in a spring. They don't care that you used less fresh water. They care that pressure changed. Here's where it gets interesting. Power turns into the hidden knife. DLE moves work from sunlight to electricity. Those beds don't regenerate themselves. Pumps don't pull against head for free. Polishing to battery grade, carbonate or hydroxide, still needs heat and clean power. At 14,000 feet, grids are thin. Diesel fills gaps with a smell that undercuts ESG slides. A company brings in gensets, and suddenly the green fix carries a fuel bill and a carbon line that invites questions. The water story improved, the energy story got heavier. Meanwhile, the reagent train stretches back to the coast. Ion exchange, resins, solvents, acids, bases, none of it grows on altiplano bushes. A strike at the port shaves inventory to bones. A truck flips on a hairpin. The plant switches to a shorter wash to conserve stock, pushing fouling into next week. ESG teams write careful notes about safe handling and spill plans. Communities read the material safety data sheets and ask where waste streams go. Tailings ponds you didn't plan for become part of the site map. Unknown to them, across town, procurement at a battery maker rewrites a clause. Any DLE-sourced feed must demonstrate stable quality for 6 months straight. Not pilot months, commercial months. One off-spec shipment, the contract throttles volume. That's where DLE's other knife shows up, quality. Battery grade isn't just high purity, it's consistent particle size, low trace metals, predictable behavior in cathode recipes. If the polish step hiccups, your green feed becomes industrial grade. It'll sell, but not to the line you promised. Plot twist, DLE turns into M&A bait. Mid-sized players with promising pilots get courted by majors who want the option, not the obligation. Equity swaps come with prove-it milestones. If the skid hits recovery and stability targets for a full season, the second tranche funds. If not, the option lapses. Capital flows, but cautiously. Lenders love the idea of shorter cycle times. They still underwrite to the worst week on record. The bankable number barely moves. On the Salar, operators start blending old and new. A smaller pond train pairs with DLE to smooth peaks and valleys. When brine chemistry drifts, they lean on evaporation to precondition feed. When weather turns, they throttle DLE to maintenance. It isn't elegant, it is resilient. Water meters stay public. Community dashboards show reinjection volumes and pressures. A stoplight system appears, green to run, yellow to slow, red to stop. It's not what the brochure promised, but it keeps the conversation going. Now remember the shadow price of water from earlier. DLE can lower it, sometimes a lot, by reducing evaporation loss. That wins friends, but it shifts the fight to power and waste. If the only way to keep beds clean is to truck more reagents and burn more diesel, you've just traded one bottleneck for 3. The desert notices. So do investors when OPEX creeps up. This was the moment everything changed in how DLE was pitched, not as a silver bullet, but as a tool, useful, finicky, site-specific. In some basins, it'll shine. In others, the chemistry says no. And while engineers wrestled with columns and cones, politics a day's drive away made a quiet move that would shake the whole board. Meanwhile, 2019 lit a fuse in Bolivia. Coups, contracts, and the Andes playbook. 3 days after that dust storm clipped a DLE skid, something else snapped, this time in La Paz. Streets filled, flags waved. The 2019 political upheaval in Bolivia wasn't about lithium in a headline sense, but lithium sat there like a weight on the table. Expectations were huge, patience was thin, and every promise carried a price the salt couldn't pay fast enough. Here's where it gets interesting. Contract law tried to cage the chaos. Deals came with sliding royalties, offtake rights, and stability clauses meant to outlive cabinets and cabinets after them. But paper meets power at the checkpoint, not the courthouse. In Juni, the German joint venture with ACI Systems, once the showpiece for batteries made with Bolivian pride, was scrapped under pressure. Protests said the terms gave too much away. The government blinked. Unknown to some outside observers, Chinese-linked agreements faced heat too. TBEA's planned salt flat projects hit pause amid the turmoil, with implementation delayed under political pressure even as frameworks lingered. The message traveled fast. Sovereignty first, spreadsheets second. Action looked like this. A convoy rolled toward the Salar and stopped. Community leaders held up a list. Water monitors, hiring quotas, a revenue floor for schools. Engineers waited in trucks while negotiators ducked into a municipal hall that smelled like dust and soup. Phones buzzed in Santiago, Buenos Aires, and Shanghai. A board member asked, "Are our stability clauses enough?" The local answer was simple: not if meters don't show respect. Impact rippled past Bolivia's borders. Nationalization cycles, resource pride rising, budget needs biting aren't new in the Andes. Chile had already framed lithium as strategic, with tight state oversight. Argentina's provinces sold speed but kept leverage close. Bolivia's jolt reminded everyone that contracts aren't shields, they're starting points. A clause that worked last year can feel like an insult this year if wells dip or headlines flare. Lenders noticed. Political risk insurance added riders for social unrest tied to water. Premiums climbed, timelines stretched. Meanwhile, China played the long game. Equity plus infrastructure. A road here, a transmission line there, a prepayment that unlocks a port slot when the first drums ship. Patience buys options. If a project pauses, capital doesn't scream, it waits, or it slides to a neighbor basin. Offtake letters come with quiet perks, training programs, lab upgrades, even university ties that shape the next generation of metallurgists. The aim isn't this cargo, it's the corridor. Western buyers pivoted differently. The Inflation Reduction Act in the United States threw money at secure supply, but secure didn't just mean ally flags. It meant traceability, labor standards, and low-carbon power claims that are hard to prove at altitude. Automakers started asking for provenance audits and carbon intensity caps alongside price. Some deals offered price floors and ceilings to calm chaos, quasi-cartel logic wrapped in ESG language. We'll pay steady if you ship steady. The catch, steady needs water and trust. But here's the thing, geography keeps veto power. A coup-proof contract can't move a mountain pass after a slide. The stability clause doesn't pump a dry well. So the Andes playbook evolved. Operators baked hydrology triggers into offtakes. If basin indicators flash yellow, volumes throttle without penalties. Communities got revenue floors tied to aquifer health, not just tonnage. Money still flows when pumps slow. That swap buys time. It also sets a precedent others will copy. Plot twist, some governments learn to weaponize certainty, publish live water data, set transparent quotas with public models, make approvals slow but predictable. Investors hate surprises more than they hate limits. Chile's tight leash suddenly looked like a premium product compared to volatile speed elsewhere. Argentina's provinces responded with fast lanes that still required baseline basin studies and real-time monitors everyone could see. Bolivia's stance hardened around state leadership paired with selective partnerships, control the hub, invite help on spokes. Unknown to them, across town in a bank tower, a project finance team rewrote risk. They split loans into tranches tied to social milestones, signed water councils, functioning dashboards, independent audits. Hit it, pricing steps down. Money, calibrated to politics, started behaving like another engineer on the project, nudging choices toward resilience. Micro moments kept shaping macro outcomes. A minister's breakfast gets interrupted by news that a blockade lifted after the company agreed to publish reinjection pressures hourly. An offtake manager drops a coffee when a text lands. Shipment diverted, port strike. A young geologist from Potosi walks her grandmother through a live map of the basin. The old woman nods and says, "If the spring is fine, let them work." This was the moment everything changed in boardrooms. Coup-proof stopped meaning iron contract and started meaning elastic system. Build slack into logistics. Pair diesel with a solar battery microgrid to cover brownouts. Keep a reagent buffer for a month, not a week. Train 2 local crews for every critical role so attrition doesn't stall a line. Pay for buses on election day so turnout is high and rumors are low. It's unglamorous. It works. Geography still picks winners. Atacama's world-class chemistry plus strict quotas creates premium, predictable tons if you play by the hydrology. Uni's scale demands patience and chemistry discipline, or it punishes you with magnesium and politics. Hombre Muerto's mosaic favors operators who collaborate across fences. Policy can tilt the field. It can't flatten the Andes. Meanwhile, 2019's lesson kept echoing. Sovereignty isn't a hurdle, it's the ground. If you treat it like friction, it burns you. If you treat it like design, it carries you. And while the lawyers redlined verbs, a convoy of trucks crawled toward a port slot that would decide whether a battery plant ran a Sunday shift or went dark.